boxing fans? This is the Rope-A-Dope Radio Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carlson. It is live. It is live per usual Wednesday. I just messed up the whole intro. It is Wednesday. We're live per usual, 6 on the West, 9 on the East, and 2 UK time. And boy, do we have ourselves a show to talk about. We got a lot of banter. We got some preview. And of course, we have predictions for the big event coming up this weekend. I say event because some people don't even really want to call it a real fight per se, boxing wise anyway. Or even the UFC guys who say it's a half a fight, a third of a fight because you can't use your legs and you can't wrestle and all that. Well, you can wrestle a little bit on the inside, but you can't take people down, get on top of them, and beat them up. So obviously, a lot of the focus for this show will be surrounding Mayweather McGregor, the money fight, the money grab. The ultimate money grab is exactly what it is. You can't really think of a bigger money fight. It fits the description perfectly. That's for sure. So we will talk about it. Now, am I going to spend, some long winded segment of breaking down the X's and O's? The left hand in the fourth round will start to land. No, I'm not going to really do that. Now, I will touch upon some items and some key points, I guess you could say, on both sides. Obviously, we know Mayweather's game. We know what he's trying to accomplish, all that stuff. Yeah, I will be discussing some things on the McGregor side, though. I think you got to do, your due diligence. Like I said, I'm not going to break down every little tidbit about him, but I guess my point is, when breaking this thing down, does McGregor have more than just a puncher's chance? That's always said in a fight, especially boxing, whereas in MMA, puncher's chance doesn't get thrown out of the window, but it does to an extent because you can, not even get hit and just take somebody down that's, less experienced. So we'll be breaking it down from the awkwardness of his stance. The early rounds, we know Floyd is usually measuring. There could be a chance that he has a fair amount of rust on him in the early goings because of the 2-year break. So we're going to break it down. I feel like I'm in the minority here, but I do feel like McGregor has more of a chance than just a puncher's chance. I'm not saying he's going to win the fight. I've actually made 2 bets on this fight that I'll, discuss a little bit more. If you don't want to pay that $100 or non-HD, $90, or should I say $89.99? It might even be $89.95. I don't know. You know how they do those strange numbers just to make it add up. Maybe you're looking for a different venue to watch it. We'll go over all the different ways you can watch this this fight, whether it's in the movie theater, which is interesting, whether it's at a bar, especially the local bars here in Minnesota. That's where I'm based out of. I'll definitely go over a list of that as well. And so we're just going to take it all for what it's worth. Now, we will be getting into a little bit more detail with the undercard. If you look at the undercard split up from Fox for a couple hours in the late afternoon, early evening time, all the way to 2 fights that I'm interested in on the actual pay-per-view undercard. Nathan Cleverly takes on Badu Jack. This is Badu Jack's first fight at 175. I think stylistically that'll be fun to watch, and I think it's a nice little test for Badu on the way up to a new weight class, like I mentioned. Andrew Tabiti going against Steve Cunningham. Now, we know Cunningham is aged, right? He's faded, but the guy comes to fight generally. So that could be an interesting fight. It could be a decent test for a young cruiserweight. Obviously, we know Gervonta Davis is probably going to knock his guy out. They tried a couple of opponents, and it didn't work, so they went with a guy that nobody really knows. He was actually almost about to become the mandatory. He was going to fight Billy Dibb, but they couldn't come to terms to become a mandatory, so it's a mandatory type fight, really, opponent. Also, an interesting fight between Ugas and Delorme, which, considering Sean Porter had to drop out, I think that's a pretty damn good substitute. If you would have told me, hey, Ugas and Dolmer are fighting, I'd be like, yeah, that's cool. That's an interesting fight. Ugas has been on a nice little run, so we will break it down. We'll talk a little bit of the HBO card as well. Miguel Cotto. To say it like Harold Letterman would. Miguel Cotto, the Puerto Rican legendary fighter, going against a Japanese fighter, Kamagai, who's always game to fight. So hopefully stylistic, that'll be a fun fight to watch. I do favor Cotto, but we'll get into some of the details when we get there. So like I said, we will be focused on a variety of this stuff. We will get into the undercard, though. Not to say it's just some deep undercard, but it's pretty solid beyond Gervonta Davis's opponent, I think. And we knew, that's really a setup fight to make him look good in front of a huge audience. So it's actually pretty smart. It's much like Santa Cruz and Lomachenko. Some people know Lomachenko, a lot of people as far as casual fans and just mainstream sports fans who are willing to watch a variety of things throughout the year because it just interests them. They're interested in sports and it interests them. A lot of people knew Lomachenko when I say his name off of that Mayweather Pacquiao undercard. They're like, oh, yeah, I saw him on that card. Yep. And who did he fight? Well, he doesn't know who he fought, but he knew he looked good. So I think that's really their goal when it comes to that. But that's not to say that we won't talk about some news going on out there. Obviously, we're going to start the show with recap from Terrence Crawford, the KO, the easy KO to the body. I love body shot KOs, man. Just love them. Wish it had happened more often. I wish fighters would go to the body a lot more often than they do nowadays. So we'll talk about that. Not much to talk about on the undercard, really. We'll talk a little bit about that. We will cover the Golden Boy promotions on ESPN2 card and also last night's PBC on FS1 card. One of the undercard fights, I believe it was the opener on that Golden Boy card from Puerto Rico. I think that may be one of their best action fights thus far that they've had on this series. I think it is. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll get into Crawford since, he took care of business against Julius Ndongo and completely, unified the whole division, undisputed champ. Now we know he has his sights set on 147, and obviously he's going to 147 in style, coming off having all the belts. It'll be interesting to see the youth in that division and some vets, even a vet like Broner, kind of sneak into these opportunities when, in fact, all the belts get released. You got Lipinets, you got Prograis, you got, what's his name? I was just going to say his name, too. I can't remember it for some odd reason. You got a lot of talent. It's just youth. It's youthful talent right now. I'm not going to say any of them are elite, but it's going to be fun to watch that make its way up. But we're going to talk 147. That's what we're going to do. We're going to talk 147 for Terrence Crawford and what belongs there. What should be next? We'll map out his next couple of fights, whether it's realistically or not. You have to speak realistic when it comes to this. And we'll give you a little bit more detail when it comes to the Top Rank ESPN deal. Supposedly there's going to be an announcement coming out here soon. And Thomas Hauser wrote an article not too long ago that talked a little bit about the Top Rank ESPN deal. It mentioned investors. It mentioned some issue that it had with the actual deal, and just their plans, because we always heard about some sort of live streaming service. And now we know, now that ESPN has put themselves in position with a streaming service that I believe debuts either late 2017 or early 2018. They recently just bought a bigger part of a streaming service that they owned a partial amount of anyway. So that's good news for boxing fans in general. So we're just going to talk a little bit about that as well. The numbers were a little low considering this fight did get some late advertising, especially when it just comes to quick commercial stuff during SportsCenter and other sports for ESPN. But just in general, it didn't get pumped up that much. Like, they didn't hit you over the head with it. I figured Manny Pacquiao, that fight, would get way more than anything that would be on there. And that's given. I'm not thinking they're going to spend 2-3 weeks of talking about this fight, because not a lot of people know Indongo. But they did have a nice late rush of talk, basically, across the networks. And like I said, I started seeing a lot more commercials for it. And I thought they did a good job with the advertising and how it looked. That's for sure. It just didn't necessarily pay out too much. So we're going to go over some details when it comes to that. Some other news out there dealing with Lomachenko and Rigondeaux, Santa Cruz and Mares, Floyd Mayweather. There was an article written not long ago about his plan to open up a bunch of gyms that have kind of a fitness/boxing theme to them. It's going to include an app. So I think that's actually really a smart thing if he can make it work. And we'll talk a little bit more. We now know that Manny Pacquiao is gonna fight for sure. And that we'll talk a little bit more detailed there. And we'll talk a little undercard for the Golovkin-Canelo fight. Everything is just getting swallowed up by this freaking Mayweather fight, this Mayweather-McGregor fight. So much attention has been taken away from a variety of things once Sunday and Monday and Tuesday go by. And I should say more like Tuesday, Wednesday, because no matter what happens in the ring, people are either going to be complaining about it and bitching or ranting, or who knows, maybe there's a highlight knockout. They're going to be talking about it regardless. But once that, Tuesday, Wednesday hit, then it's nice to get out of that, have like one more, week before NFL kicks in. College football will kick in the week after. And then for boxing fans anyway, we'll start to tune our focus in to Canelo and Golovkin. So we will go over some news as well. Right away, though, I want to start with just, some recap. Some recap from this weekend. Obviously, if you don't know by now, I don't know when you're ever going to know. Well, I shouldn't say that because the rating wasn't great. But Terrence Crawford is a guy that is just getting better. And obviously, what we really find out about Terrence Crawford, as far as just how elite he is and where he stands in boxing after, 135 and 140, nobody really challenged him there. Gamboa had some moments in the first couple rounds. Other fighters did too. Thomas Delorme comes to mind, but he got knocked out. Basically, these guys aren't really on his level. And going into the fight, I was excited about it for the storytelling purposes. I wasn't really enthralled into this fight. I even said last week that I wasn't going to sit here and hit people over the head with this fight, because yes, it's awesome that we have an undisputed champion, something we haven't had in a long, long time on the men's side. That's for sure. Ever since Jermaine Taylor, obviously B-Hop put all the belts together to be able to have it unified. And I think Costa Zoo was the 140 last time the 140 was unified. Or not unified, but undisputed. So although it's great to put on your ledger in your career goals, and obviously it's not a goal anymore. He achieved it. So it's great for your resume. It looks great. It's all shiny and all that. But when push comes to shove, this fight was kind of going to be one-sided. Now, this is where the Crawford part comes in. I don't think too many people thought, I mean, calling for a mid to late KO, that's fine. That's what I called for too. But I thought the jab and just a couple of things that, I saw out of Ndongo, I did think he'd at least last till the mid-round. So really, Crawford went over the top. And just real quick, the first big shot of the fight was a counter left by Crawford. He really, I'm not sure if he completely hurt him, but it seemed like he woke him up, or at least buzzed him. That's what it looked like to me. And then you had Ndongo just kind of leaping and missing a lot with his shots. Now, he landed a couple good shots, and we've seen you can do that on Crawford early in the fight, but they were far and few between, and he was missing way more than he was landing, obviously. Second round, I'd say right around the halfway point. Big right hand lands hard. Several body shots and kind of a left hand that landed kind of behind the ear a little bit, or right on the ear, caused the knockdown. And he got up, and you thought, man, when you saw the replay, it didn't look like much. I really think the body shot is actually what started the whole thing. And then just a beautiful left hand to the body knocked him out. I mean, it was over so quick. That did surprise me, I got to say. I didn't think that would be that quick. So kudos to Crawford. We'll talk a little bit more about him at 147, and we'll talk about a little bit more about Top Rank ESPN stuff as well. As far as the undercard, Shakur Stevenson fought and won handedly. Didn't look great doing it. There has been, what is this, his third or fourth fight? I think it's his third fight. People are starting to kind of sour on him due to power, And it to be honest, it doesn't look like he's got a lot of power. That's for sure. Something you can develop, some of that as you go. Some of that has to do with your style. Are you just trying to pot shot? How much are you setting traps so you can land that knockout punch if, in fact, you're not just going to come at your guy and railroad him and try to knock him out. So he looked pretty good. At times looked sharp. Other times he still has the amateurish stuff going on. I'm not the type to judge a guy too early just because I've made those mistakes in the past. I mean, if you were to look at Andre Ward coming up, he wasn't that impressive in my mind anyway. I don't believe so. I don't think he was that impressive at all coming up. Now, obviously, the Boone fight really helped him out down the line. That obviously sent, a lot of shockwaves through boxing at the time. Like, dude, I don't think he's got a chin. You know what I mean? It's obviously speaking of Ward at that time. But, so, yeah, I try not to make a mistake of going too far in when it comes to this, because I just like to wait and see. I like to wait and see. I'm not a big fan of just jumping on something to where it's so great, or the other way around too, where it's like I'm not going to sit there and rip a kid just yet. And it's not about ripping them. It's, you got to tell the truth about it, obviously, and you got to see, you got to see what you see and go from there. But I don't know. Some people are really. I think maybe people were a little too high on him. Maybe if they're already jumping off the bandwagon, so to speak. I'm not sure why you were on the bandwagon that much then if you're already willing to give up on the kid. But I can understand, you know, some people's thoughts on that as well. So as far as the undercard goes, though, he got the job done and looked okay doing it. But yeah, he's definitely going to have to adjust to that style that it doesn't seem like he's adjusted too well just yet, anyway. And by the way, the number to call is 646 381 4990. Doesn't surprise me that I see some numbers that I don't always see on here. Welcome. Hope everybody's doing good, having a good hump day. I suppose it's kind of over now, the daytime anyway. Well, in the west it's still bright out. It's getting dark here on the central time now. 8:20 and it's looking pretty dark outside. It's not all the way dark, but hopefully you guys saw some photos at least, if not with your own eyes. The eclipse, obviously the solar eclipse, that was kind of cool. A lot of good photos. I got a couple of good photos that I posted on my Facebook page. Should definitely check them out. What was I gonna say? Okay, so the second fight, Vostik, I think is how you say that. Alexander Vostik taking on Craig Baker. I remember Craig Baker I want to say he was on an NBC Sports Network card. I could be wrong, though. I just remember people are like, who the hell is this guy, And that's kind of what people thought when they saw this guy. But I'll say this. I actually thought he fought a little better than I would have thought. And maybe that's because Vostik was really just content on keeping him away with the jab. And that's what he did. First round, he landed some jabs. A couple of them were hard, but for the most part, he was just kind of staying away from him, keeping his distance, and landing. Every once in a while, once you got into the second or third round, every once in a while, Baker would land his own stiff jab. But that was about it. And, he was moving around, kind of playing it safe. Not a lot of people were high on his performance, although, if you look at what Vostik did to Gonzalez, it makes you think, wow, that was really impressive. So I've kind of come around to him where I'm just being patient. It's still early in his career for Vostik, and to me, a lot of people were high on him, and I checked him. I said, I'm not sure. Then like I said, I like what I saw with Gonzalez. Like, man, this dude, wow. But then he had this fight where it took him a little while to step it up. But once he did, once you got into the fourth and fifth round, obviously the sixth round is where it all ended. It was about 5 or 6 right hands that ultimately, scored the knockdown. And then pretty soon it was just TKO. It was over. So I'll say this. I wasn't going to complain about this card, because you had a unification. You had an undisputed champion being crowned. I mean, obviously, if there was a draw, that wouldn't have happened. But you know what I mean. So I'm not going to sit here and complain. But, well, I guess I'm complaining a little bit, right? Because now that we didn't get much in the main event, it always helps to have something of interest on the undercard. And that's not to say Vostik isn't something of interest, but when you're already kind of having him in a showcase, then Stevenson in a complete walkover in the first fight, it's kind of weak. Let's put it that way. It's kind of weak. So overall, it was okay. But like I said, you weren't going to get me to sit there and rip the first 2 fights because of the main event, the importance of it. So it is what it is. It was an okay card. The whole card average, what was it, 965, I believe, 965,000, which is just a little bit over what I think is second to last or was it his last one? I can't remember. It's not that much better than his last two on HBO. And obviously, we don't know the peak numbers. We believe it peaked over 1 million. It should have. Now, the main event was only, it wasn't long. So it helps the overall average when you have a shorter broadcast, of course. But it would have a chance to peak a little higher if it would have got to the sixth or seventh round. You know what I mean? And when you go a little longer, when you start to fade into Sports Center, you're going to naturally have people tuning into Sports Center that come to the fight and all that see the fight and stay. So, not great numbers, to be honest with you, considering what his last couple of HBO fights did. And I think the Lomachenko numbers were even more troubling because they were actually lower than HBO. And remember, anytime the PBC did even a decent number, decent to mediocre to just downright bad, they would get ripped hard. And it would be really a huge joke going around. And it is funny how you don't see the media really going at it. Not to say that I want them to, but it just, once again, showing the clear biasness. And when the media does it, then after that, the fans catch up onto it and it becomes a life of its own. Now, I'm not saying you should overly rip this number, but it's not that great. It's below what Garcia did. We got to see the peak on it. It could have, it probably peaked just as high as Thurman Collazo. My guess is, I think that peaked at 1.2 or something like that. So my guess is it could have peaked that high. But we really don't know when it comes to that. But I don't know. It wasn't a great card, and like I said, we're gonna find out how serious Top Rank is when it comes to this ESPN deal. Now, I know they're serious; they're going all in, and I applaud them for it. I've always said it took Bob Arum to not make the money he was making and not to have the control on the sport to be able to come up with this new stuff and say, hey, yeah, not come up with it, but change their path, right, as a company. So I'm glad that Top Rank is with the ESPN. It just, you can see the difference. I mean, for instance, if you look at their next two cards that are scheduled, their next card is just okay. Now, when a fighter stays busy and has like a mandatory, right, or maybe even a title eliminator where you know he's going to win, it just puts him in the right position. That's kind of what we're dealing with in their next card. Now, their next card is what? September 22nd, I believe. This is going to be in Arizona. So Oscar Valdez has a mandatory that's undefeated. Don't know much about the guy, so I'm not going to rip the fight at all. It's a mandatory. You got to stay busy. Obviously, it would have been nice to get the mandatory out of the way in April and be able to have Mariaga, go head-to-head. That would have been a great fight. Mariaga not even fighting Lomachenko, But that's neither here or there, right? I'll say this, at least the main event doesn't really do much for me at all. But I get it. A lot of times if you're going to be in your hometown or in your home state, you're going to be the main event, right? So I get that. I get it. It stays busy, gets some shine. But at least they have Jesse Hart against Ramirez on the undercard. Two unbeaten guys. It's interesting because you have basically two top 10 guys at the 168. 168 is going to get figured out here in the next year or two. With what the PBC is doing a little bit on their side with Benavidez, which will probably leave to Durrell, if in fact he gets by that, which he should win. That's September 7th on Showtime. Showtime's doing that. Showtime. It's not a ShowBox, but it's not a Showtime Championship Boxing. It's a Showtime Special Edition. So he could fight Durrell. He could, who knows what happens with the other, Andre Durrell in that situation. I'm not really sure if that's going to be a fight that happens too. But at least it's a good fight, right? You've at least seen Hart. You know it's time for him to, now he's at that contender range. It's time for him to step up. So I can live with it because you go, okay, well, if you're going to stay busy and have a showcase in the main event, we talk about this all the time, then at least give us something to grip our teeth in on the undercard. And I think that's a pretty decent fight. I don't think Top Rank's necessarily done that yet with this deal. I think, that Beltran, I think the Beltran Vasquez was probably their most evenly matched 50-50 fight on the undercards, right? Or just in general, actually. I think that was probably the most even fight on paper, or close to equally matched, closely matched on paper. So I still think when the PBC has a main event that stay busy, they get destroyed. And then the co-feature just gets thrown out, and that's where you see this shit where you're like, come on, guys. So I do think that but their next one on ESPN is two like title eliminator positioning yourself type fights. Because remember, Better Biev is going to be on that broadcast against a guy he should pretty much destroy. And isn't Bivol, Dmitry Bivol? I think he's on there as well, because that's something that they're trying to go to. So these fights have to take place. You got them on your roster. You want to grow these guys, so you're going to put them on TV. Now, the fights they're in, it's not really something that I'm looking forward to. They're not really equally matched or even closely matched, but we know that you have to go through the system. And so that's what these fights are. Not great, not horrible, not the worst ever. But once again, when it got announced or when it's been talked about, you haven't really heard. I've heard positive because it's Better Biev, and thank God he's fighting. But I haven't really heard people hacking the card when they should put something of note in there and make it a triple header or something like that. So it is what it is when it comes to this. I'm not sitting there saying rip Top Rank, but if you're going to rip a certain side, then you got to rip the other side. That's all. That's all I'm saying. And I knew this would come when it came to this this new deal, and they wouldn't have a fair shake. I mean, we've heard of like one rating from Golden Boy ESPN2. The only rating we've heard, I believe, is the ESPN. Not that I've heard. I know the ratings, but that they've talked about. It's kind of funny how that works. But anyway, I am excited for. There's some details that recently came out, and I'm going to get to the Golden Boy card and the PBC card. I just want to wrap this up. So it sounds like this was back on August 9th. The Walt Disney Company, which owns ESPN, unveiled plans for an ESPN over-the-top streaming subscription video service that will debut in 2018. Obviously, the cord cutters have been an issue. Streaming it's not as good as deal. In fact, to even add up to a 30-second ad, you need so many millions of, or at least a million. I can't remember what the number is exact, but you need a lot of people watching a live stream to even equate to that. Sports TV ratings is a good follow on Twitter for that, and he came out months ago and said something about that in general. So I'm just happy that it's there, and it sounds like that's going to be part of the deal, that they'll be on ESPN. Top Rank will be, of course, on ESPN Deportes as well, potentially on ABC, maybe, I don't know, once a year, twice a year, 4 times. I have no clue. But also part of the streaming will be that streaming video channel, which is cool. The undercards or just the mid-level prospect stuff that they could put on. Maybe, streaming that would have been better with that Better BF card, But any kind of stuff that you'd see on Unamas or, that type of thing. The prospect mid-level fights will probably be on that as well. So I really like that. And we always heard about the streaming service thing from them. And it makes a lot of sense to do it with ESPN because ESPN owned a portion of this streaming service. And now they've just bought a good chunk of it. I don't know if they bought it all, but so they're going all in. And it's nice to, when a company like ESPN's going all in with Disney's backing and boxing's at least involved. Now, how deeply it's involved, I don't know exactly. I don't know if they're going to do it. Now, here's what Thomas Hauser, this is coming from the Sweet Science. This is what some news he talked about when it came to this. It says, as far as dealing with this Top Rank, because that's the thing. There's been no details beyond like dates for this year and next year. There's been no details about this actual deal with Top Rank and ESPN. And this is, I'm reading verbatim. He says, it was also understood that Top Rank would have access to a third-party venture capital fund that would provide financial assistance for the signing and development of fighters, which would be obviously huge. But the venture capital investor is believed to have pulled out of the deal at the last minute, leaving Top Rank in the position of asking ESPN for more money, which might not be forthcoming. Finding another investor or digging deeper into its own pockets to finance its portion of the venture. That maybe that's what they need to do. And he goes on to say there has been a little bit of drop, not a little bit, a major drop, as far as, which you knew there was going to be a drop from the Pacquiao stuff, but it didn't look good when Lomachenko actually averaged lower than what he was doing on HBO. Obviously, people are going to look at that and go, that just doesn't make sense. That's always been the PBC thing when they get a mediocre to okay to just horrible, rating. They're always saying there's 90 million homes and this, that, and the other compared to 35 or 33, whatever, for HBO. But, it is what it is. So that's pretty interesting, though. And it sounds like this weekend or something like that. Soon, anyway. Maybe it'll be at the end of the week. Maybe it'll be early next week. They're going to announce more of the deal. And it does sound like they're finalizing more of a long-term deal. That's what a lot of, news is out there saying. People that have a source closer to the source. And Dan Raphael has always said patience. They're figuring it out. They're getting it figured out. And that would make sense because you'd assume that they had already been talking about this for quite some time. You would assume they'd already have gotten a good chunk of that figured out and kind of close to their deal when they announced it. You would assume that there'd be even more details, but who knows? Now, this is just Tom Hauser talking. Well, I shouldn't say it's just him talking, but this is him talking, not me. I don't know for a fact if there was investors in it. I have no clue. I'm just saying that straight up. I have no clue about that. But it would make sense because, I always thought that there was some sort of, whether he took a loan out or he wants to come with his own money or somebody invests, I always thought that, because for instance, okay, Crawford and Postall right now wouldn't have been on HBO, would have had to been a pay-per-view because you had both guys making over $1 million. How many times in the last year and a half or so on HBO has both guys made $1 million and been on HBO? Not that much, not that many, right? So, but who's putting that money up? We know that ESPN's pitching in money, but do we know what they're giving per card? Are they giving $1 million? Are they giving 500,000? Are they giving like double what a Friday Night Fights average would be? I don't know. Obviously, Friday Night Fights, for the most part anyway, was on ESPN2, which is a little bit of a lesser brand than straight up ESPN. It's obviously the same thing to an extent, but not the same reach. as far as ratings. Not necessarily reach, but ratings. So it's kind of interesting. I'm really excited that hopefully the live stream's not just undercard stuff. Hopefully they actually have live stream of prospects in mid-level cards. That's what I'm hoping. That it's not all just because the reason why I say that is because, as we know, it's cool when people live stream their stuff. When Showtime does that Showtime Extreme, the prelim stuff, that's all cool. But sometimes they're good fights. Sometimes they're just either tune-ups or, well, for instance, look at the fights on the undercard on this one. I mean, you had some names, Brian Jennings and Alvarado, who, by the way, scored a highlight reel knockout. I think it was a right hand, right? So you had that, but you had him in mismatches. So the streaming service really doesn't do much if it's just mismatches. And that's why I'm saying I hope that the mid-level and prospect stuff can be like a full card and not just that. But we'll see. Like I said, there is announcements forthcoming. And I'm just happy to see boxing get on ESPN. And although the last two ratings were underwhelming, you got to start someplace. And it's not like a lot of people knew Ndongo, right? So, yeah. So that's where we're at there. Crawford at 147. Well, it's kind of strange because right after the fight, it kind of made it sound like Top Rank made it sound like he was going to be back before the end of the year. So if he's before the end of the year, I mean, Jesse Vargas would probably be the best opponent, but he hasn't fought in a while, right? So maybe he'd want to fight before he would have to fight Crawford, A name that's standing out for obvious reasons, obvious and unfortunate reasons, is Mike Alvarado. Now, Alvarado's been on a little winning streak. He's been showing up in shape, I guess. I didn't get to see this fight. I heard that of course, I saw the knockout, but I heard that it wasn't some easy fight for him, even though he ended it with a knockout. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But I understand getting your feet wet at 147. But I think Jesse Vargas is a great opponent for getting your feet wet. I don't really want to see the Alvarado. I need Alvarado to fight someone solid at 147 and beat him, and then he can get a Crawford fight potentially. But if they're going to sneak one more in, which is possible, it probably isn't going to be much. And Bob Arum also talked about, which of course is Crawford, Top Rank, Crawford's promoter. He said that he's going to have Crawford go to Australia and watch the fight and kind of pump up the fight that way. Well, my guess is during a camp in November, if he fights in December, let's say, my guess is he's not flying to Australia for a long weekend during a camp when he has to fight in a couple weeks after that, potentially anyway. That's just my hunch. So that kind of tells me he's not going to fight the rest of the year. And if it is, let's just say if Alvarado's his next fight, there's a pretty good chance that he's going to try to match Horn or Pacquiao with him. I think it'd be easier to match Horn if Horn were to beat Pacquiao in the second fight. I think it'd be easier to match him because of the money, whereas we know Manny wants a big paycheck, and he's getting a really big paycheck on these Horn fights because of the Australian government. In fact, we now know that it's just a matter of time before we find out, and it's official, that Manny Pacquiao will fight Jeff Horn in that second one. We pretty much knew, but now we know because the Australian government, they pulled the funding for the fight until Pacquiao reached out and said, I'm for sure going to fight. And they pulled it. There was I believe I saw it on boxingscene.com, an article about it. They pulled it because they're like, well, we don't even know if he's going to fight for sure. So we're going to pull it until he comes up, and not but the next day, within 24 hours, I think, Pacquiao's people, probably Collins, like, no, we're fighting, dude. We don't want to lose that money. So it's much easier to stage this fight when you have, Commerce, the Department of Tourism, putting up money as a spectacle, and obviously a good fight now, right now that we actually saw it in the ring. It's a lot easier to do Manny on ESPN when a government's putting up a good chunk of money. But our government's not going to put a big chunk of money for Manny Pacquiao and Crawford. That's going to have to be pay-per-view here. Because that'd be a huge... it'd be a huge risk not to do it on pay-per-view. You're not going to make your money off the ads. And if you do, you don't know if you're going to, right? So your budgeting would be kind of strange on that. I don't think you'd make your money. And it'd just be a big loss. At least put it on pay-per-view, you could make some of your money back potentially. Or make money off it. I really don't know. It's kind of interesting. Although it would be a significant investment for the future of the sport to put Manny and Crawford on ABC. And obviously it would work wonders for Crawford if he were successful, because that would be a huge audience that they could draw. Manny Pacquiao and Crawford on ABC would be huge. But it's a big investment. And I don't think Top Rank's out of the pay-per-view market just yet. Right? So I'm thinking if we see Alvarado next, I think that Pacquiao and Horn winner, I think that's actually a legitimate fight that I think we see, because the risk factor there, putting him with Alvarado is not really a risk. So, but Jesse Vargas, I think, would be a perfect fight. Maybe early next year. I don't know how many dates are left. I remember the December 9th and December 23rd, they were going back and forth for Loma's next fight. It sounds like they're settled in on December 9th. So I don't know. I really don't know if there is even a date available at that time. I don't know if they have both the dates or they had to choose which one they wanted. Have no clue. So obviously by next year, it sounds like Thurman and Spence will have probably unified. So that'd be 3 belts. You'd have the WBO belt here. By the end of next year, in a perfect world, you could have Thurman Spence winner fight the Crawford, whoever wins the Pacquiao Horn rematch, and wins that fight. That'd be huge. But I just don't see it happening like that. I don't see, and I know that Crawford said a lot during the week saying, I want to fight Thurman right off the bat at 147, basically. Or maybe get a quick tune-up, get it acclimated to the weight, and just go right after Thurman. That's fine and dandy, and I'm glad he's saying stuff. Sometimes Crawford doesn't express himself enough and call out people, So that was cool, but what are the odds? And it's not like he can't make this fight happen on ESPN even. Would Al let Spence or Thurman or one of these top guys go over? Well, he let Danny Jacobs go over, but I wouldn't say he's necessarily a top guy per se compared to the other guys who've been in that limelight, who've been champions, who've been in front of big crowds for a while now. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how. My point is, though, the money's there to get a Thurman or one of these guys over there, or Garcia for that matter, whatever the case may be, whatever it is. The money's there because they just gave $1 million to Ndongo. I mean, God bless you, Ndongo. Make your money, dude. Take it home and live off it for a long time. I'm really happy for him. The guy in 9 months, 8 months has done a lot at 140. God bless him. Hopefully he bounces back, and who knows, maybe he'll rule the division or be one of the top fighters from here on out, because all these Lipinets and a lot of these guys are coming up, you know? So he'll have another chance to become a champion, that's for sure. But they gave him a milli. $1 million to Indongo. I mean, that tells you Lomachenko and Mikey Garcia can happen. That tells you they can give a mil to Danny Garcia or one of these guys for this fight. It tells you can. So, we'll see. But on the flip side, don't get me wrong. How many times is Al's never given a top-ranked guy $1 million? Not to say that it was offered up like that either, though, you know, because they were always so focused on HBO, you know. So, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Real quick, last night, there was a card on the PBC on FS1. I thought the undercard, the Jamal Herring and Ladarius Miller, I thought that would be a lot closer. I thought that'd be a really competitive fight. That's not to say that Herring didn't do something a little later in the fight to make it a little bit more, you know, competitive. But Miller pretty much, I thought, won the fight cleanly. So, Miller got it done. He really did. I thought he looked pretty damn good. In fact, I gave Herring in a very close round. I did give him the third. The fourth and third were pretty close. I just thought overall Miller was jabbing better. He was landing cleaner shots. He was starting to get his left hand involved more. It just seemed like Herring couldn't get off. He just really couldn't get off much. There was a couple of really nice left hands that Miller landed. I remember one in the 6th round. And then, like I said, in the 8th and 9th, you did see Herring rally in the second half, getting to the body and the head. Both of them were getting to the body somewhat, Miller more. The hooks to the body and the head in the 10th round kind of finished it off strong. 97-93, 2 scorecards, and the other one had a 98-92. Now, Juan Carlos Payano took care of Alexis Santiago pretty easily last night, right? I mean, from round 6 to 10, it pretty much played out the same way. There was a pretty nasty cut, or it looked nasty, but once they cleaned it up, it wasn't that bad on Payano. He's basically just getting the rust off against like a durable, tough dude, basically. Santiago would land from time to time. I think in the 3rd round is one you could give to Santiago. But other than that, left hands, either lead or counters, basically got the job done for Payano. And they were going to have Warren on this card, but I believe he got hurt. Was it his opponent, or I think he got hurt? So it kind of seemed like they were trying to put these both on the same card, these guys, Payano and Warren, and have a trilogy, because they already split, the 2 fights already. So, and then real quick, the Golden Boy card, Emmanuel Rivera against Nate Green. It was Riviera pretty much handled it. I mean, right away he actually hurt Green with a great combination, really flush combination. There was in the 2nd round, there was a knockout, or a knockdown, with like the last 15, 20 seconds or so. But really, rounds 3 to 5, it was jabbing. Once in a while, land stiff. Green was mostly on the move, but Riviera basically handled it. The fight slowed, though, from round 6 to 8. Definitely slowed. There was a second knockdown in the 6th round, I believe, by Riviera, but pretty basic. The main event was Alberto Machado versus Carlos Morales, and that was an interesting fight. You saw Alberto kind of handled things for the first 4 rounds. He was just landing cleaner. A couple left hooks buzzed him a little bit. Um, he was jabbing pretty well. I thought you started seeing the attack come up from Morales in the 5th round. He got to the body more. I gave him the 5th and the 6th. Thought he was more active, and you could start to see Machado fade a little bit. Now, probably the best round of the fight was the 7th. And the 8th and 9th, once again, Morales was just busier, pressure, and slowly but surely Machado faded. I gave him, he actually almost fell out of the ring and he went through the ropes, but he almost fell all the way out of the ring into the crowd. It was a decent ending to the fight. It was about 6-4 Machado. I guess you could say it's a draw, but I had it closer to 6-4 Machado because Morales definitely, he definitely closed pretty well from the 5th round on. But the scorecards were ridiculous. 99-90. 2 of them had 99-90, and one had 98-91. Now, like I said, the first 4 rounds, and plus there was a knockdown. Really nice knockdown, like I think a minute in or something like that, or maybe a couple minutes in. Quick combo, left hook right on the chin by Machado, but he faded. He definitely faded. But I think that Juan Carlos Camacho Jr. and Edwin Rodriguez, first of all, that was a back and forth fight, and it was just fun. It was a really fun fight. Edwin Rodriguez ended up getting the win, but I think this was one of their best fights from Golden Boy. I think this is their best fight they've had on these ESPN2 cards. I know they've done ESPN normally ESPN I think twice, but normally it's on ESPN2. But I gave Camacho the first round, good action back and forth. Then I thought Rodriguez won a bunch of rounds in a row, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, even the 5th. He was landing jabs, looping right hands, just getting the better of the action. Now, both of them were landing harder, though. Landing hard. I just thought Rodriguez was landing a little harder. Camacho Jr. Seemed to pick up steam in the 6th. He finished a little stronger in that one. It was just a good fight. Wasn't anything special, but it was good. I had it 4-2 for Rodriguez. Somebody had a draw 57-57, and then 58-56 for Rodriguez. So Rodriguez gets the minor upset, I'd say. It was an upset there. I think Camacho was an unbeaten prospect, if I remember correctly. Wasn't a long fight, but it was fun. It was definitely fun. I enjoyed that. And I'm just starting to see my text messages. It sounds like Carcino is actually on live right now with Nate Jones. So I just saw the message. I don't know how long. Okay, it said 10 minutes ago. So I apologize. Let me get Carcino in right now. What's going on, Carcino? How you doing, buddy? I Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect, man. Appreciate that. All right, sounds good. All righty. We are live on the Rope Dope Radio podcast. Carcino's bringing in trainer, a really good trainer, up and coming trainer, been around for a while. Nate Jones, obviously former Olympian. He was always great friends with Floyd back on that Olympic team. He's been there through a lot of this, that's for sure. You see him in camp a lot. We've had him on the show a couple of different times. Obviously, it's fun to kind of dip in and see how the Mayweather sides. Yo, okay. Man, we're doing great. We really appreciate you taking time out of a busy week, Nate. I really appreciate this, man. So obviously, a lot of people want to know how Floyd's looking at camp. obviously now that he's been out of the ring as far as a fight for almost 2 years, we know he doesn't get way out of shape or anything like that. We know he doesn't gain a bunch of weight, but at 40, considering he hasn't had a fight in damn near 2 years, what's Mayweather looking like, man? Is it the same old Floyd? Is he just being smarter in camp? Do you see any kind of difference with this being his last camp ever? So it's really about working smarter and not harder at this age. And because some people are saying, hey, some people are saying he's not taking this guy serious, which we know that's not Floyd, but he is just being a little smarter, given his, because he spoke a lot about giving his body that recoup rest. Yeah, I'm sure we will, man. That's really interesting to see that he's still looking good in sparring, but he's just being smarter, healing his body, letting it recoup at this age. Um, yeah, I just can't believe that he's still this sharp at 40 years old, man. And has it ever kind of hit you? Has it hit you during this camp like this is it? This is the final. Has it really kind of hit you like, wow, man, this have you taken a second to kind of just appreciate it, or is that going to be Saturday night, Sunday morning? Yeah, it is. I bet she is, and we're not gonna we're not gonna hold you much longer. Like I said, we really appreciate you coming on, man, because we know you got a busy week. But as far as the whole, I'm going for a knockout because this is my last time and all that. Do you guys work on a couple of different things, no matter what the opponent is, or is it kind of just like it? Yeah, this is Well, there you have it, right from the camp of Floyd Mayweather heading into a big, big fight, his last fight of a storied career. Carcino, you got anything that you want to add in here, man? I'm good. I'm just happy that we got this. This is great. Thanks a lot, Nate. Good luck on Saturday, man. Good luck on Saturday. All right, guys, that was Nate Jones, trainer. Very important in his camp. That's for sure. You can call him a co-trainer, you can call him whatever you want, but um, he's more than just a guy that puts on the pad and let Floyd hit him to the body. Now he lets him do that, but and that's a crucial. His job is crucial, but just his presence, his knowledge, and also the being very comfortable around these two have been friends for so long. As we spoke, we've had Nate on several times throughout the years. Stand up guy. Um, I that was cool. That was really cool, especially on a complete, surprise. That was pretty dope. That was really cool. Um, so Carcino dropped, so he may call back in real quick. I'm gonna go to 937 real quick, and see what's going on. 937, you're live on the Rope a Dope Radio podcast. What's going on? 937, you there? All right, so maybe you had it on mute or something, 973. Let me check here. Let me check one more time. Or I'm sorry, 937. Was I saying 973? I apologize. 937. Yes, sir. I hear you now. Hell yeah, man. How you doing, what? Okay. You know, I haven't done it yet, but I think Mayweather actually will stop him later. I think that if you look at McGregor, the way he does actually gas in fights. I just think that after a while, I do actually. It's funny because I think he'll knock him out, but in the same breath, I think the early rounds there is some danger because of the layoff. Much of the way the Shea Mosley fight played out, how he said, it took me a second because your body needs to get used to reacting to punches again. Your body goes into relax mode. You know what I mean? When you take time off, and it's like, cool, man. It's kind of like sitting there sipping on a fruity cocktail with a funny looking long straw in it. You're just relaxing, and all of a sudden you're getting hit by Shane Mosley. So I actually think the rust and the awkwardness early in the fight could be dangerous. But once we get to the third and four, I think it's all Mayweather, and I actually do think he'll stop him. How about you? All right, right. Okay. Let the people know how they can listen to your show real quick. I don't want you to miss your flight, but I want people to know. Perfect, man. Thanks a lot, Wood. You take it easy, man. Safe travels. All right, man. Yep, later. Check out Wood, man. Check out Wood. You could check my Twitter feed. I listen to his show and I always try to put it on social media and whatnot. Good dude. Definitely a good dude. I first found out about him when he was calling into the Ringside Reporter show. So definitely a good dude. No doubt about that. I'm going to go ahead and bring in CT to the fold, see how he's doing. My switchboard's acted. I gotta reboot this thing for the rest of it because there's a variety of new numbers in, and I got to go down the list, but I got to make sure that we're good. So I'm going to bring CT in real quick and do that while we talk to CT. What's going on, CT? How you doing, buddy? I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm finally getting a little bit more excited for this fight, but I'm also excited for this fight to be over with too, if you know what I mean. Now we know Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, there's still going to be a lot of talk no matter what the outcome. Obviously, if there's a highlight reel knockout or if Floyd were to lose, that would really drag it in for so long. It'd be crazy. But, I'm kind of happy that we're nearing the end for now with this fight. What are your thoughts now that fight week is here? We're just days away. There is some unknowns, some mysterious stuff out there that you think, can McGregor do this? Can the awkwardness do that? The early rounds, maybe he can land something, yada yada yada. But in the end, it's hard for me to pick McGregor to win this fight or even win more than a couple rounds early. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts in general now that the fight is here?